Well, I can tell you this much, Bongo. It's a very exciting moment here in Accra as over 3,000 participants really are flocking to the Ghanaian capital. So there's a lot of topics really that would be explored in terms of making sure that Africa is able to also build its own economies that are resilient to so many challenges. The very buzzword, of course, is around food security. How can the continent be able to tap into the agriculture sector? You do know that Africa does have a very significant arable land. So this is one of the topics really that the delegates will be looking at, but also the most global issue, of course, the ramifications of the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and Russia. We do know that there are some countries on the continent that are still reliant on the wheat, maize and soybeans that is, of course, being taken from countries like Ukraine and Russia. Really, it's really affecting them quite badly. But joining us now is of course, the Secretary General of the bank, that, of course, Vincent Minelli. So once again, sir, thank you so much indeed, and welcome to SABC News. I suppose a very first question is, we're meeting here, it's been 2 years of virtual sessions, and I can imagine that with all the issues that you'll be looking at, there's a great deal of anticipation in terms of the concrete solutions that will be able to cushion Africa from all these socioeconomic problems.
Thank you. First of all, let me welcome you traditionally to Accra, Akwaba, as they will say in Ghana. Now, of course, it's very significant that at this moment, after 2 years of virtual meetings, the African Development Bank Group will be meeting physically in Accra to talk about issues that are pertinent to Africa's development. At this meeting, our boards of governors, the highest decision-making body of the bank, will engage as statutorily required on those issues, looking back as to how the bank had performed in the last 1 year. And of course, this is a critical time when the Russia invasion of Ukraine is topical, and its effect on African economies. And those are some of the issues that will be considered, apart from our normal, regular statutory meetings. Of course, you know that the theme of the annual meetings this year is achieving climate resilience and a just energy transition for Africa. Now, that implicates climate change and the need and the impact of climate change on the continent and what we need to do. And the fact that also in trying to adapt, Africa has to transition in a manner that allows Africa to continue to do business. So all these issues will come out. Of course, I'm sure you have more questions that we can now find out more details.
Well, undoubtedly, Mr. Secretary General, especially around the issue of the just energy transition. For example, we know that quite a number of countries on the continent are still relying on high carbon intensive energy, the coal. You look at South Africa, but also how you are involved as a bank in a country like South Africa, where you are assisting in terms of their just transition. How's the process going? Is there any appetite from the countries to make sure that they actually prioritize this?
Yeah, well, of course, there has to be appetite because, as you know, these countries have signed on to the Paris Agreement on climate change. So that is the basis for every country to begin to make input in terms of how it intends to comply with dealing with climate change. There is appetite, but the question remains that these countries are also looking for avenues whereby they do this, taking into account the need for them to develop. Now, when we say just energy transition, it is impossible for Africa to from nowhere arrive at full compliance with the Paris Agreement, right? There is a transition period required, and each country will have to, plot its way towards achieving that. Of course, the bank is very, very emphatic about complying with climate. Our climate financing is the largest in the world in any IFI or MDB. So the bank is very much committed to that. while at the same time trying to see that our member countries, particularly regional member countries, have a proper energy mix that allows us to the countries to develop while at the same time complying with the need to have cleaner energy.
Maybe just before I let you go, Mr. Secretary General, now you've set aside a fund of $1.5 billion to try and cushion the impact of the war between Russia and Ukraine. How is that going to be distributed? And just in terms of the accountability from the countries as the bank, how are you going to ensure that prevails?
Now, this fund that is called the African Emergency Food Production Facility, where our board of directors on Friday approved up to $1.5 billion for this purpose. Now, Africa needs to produce more food because of the impact of the war in Ukraine. How are we going to do that? Countries will approach the bank with their proposals, requests for funding in this area, and our board of directors will consider each proposal within its procedures to ensure that proper accountability and all that is required for each country to do to be able to access this money. So it's not something that you give away money and there will be no accountability. There will be accountability because at the end of the day, that's what the oversight is all about.
All right, so thank you so much indeed. So plenty of issues really to explore, Bonyo. So certainly tomorrow we'll be really keeping you really abreast with all the latest around it. The coming is a very critical time. So lots of people are talking about concurrent crises, rising food prices, rising energy prices, but also the very tough financial conditions as well. So a critical role to play for the bank so that we're able to come out here quite strong from these challenges.
That's Khayelihle Khumalo there, who will be monitoring developments for us at that African Development Bank meeting set to get underway tomorrow. Talking about big news.